After the Germans were defeated, the Japanese military was still in denial of surrendering. The Soviet Union, Great Britain, and the United States all came together in hopes of rebalancing the world after World War II. However, the refusal of the Japanese military led to the announcement of the Potsdam Declaration, where they agreed to use a nuclear weapon in combat for the first time in history. Despite the fact that the use of the nuclear weapons successfully ended the war, it also caused the death of countless innocent lives, proving the act as immoral.
Near the end of World War II in 1945, the United States, Great Britain, and China agreed on the possible destruction in Hiroshima and Nagasaki of Japan. On the morning of August 6, 1945, the city of Hiroshima was left to rubble, and the air of the city was filled with the stench of burnt flesh, and buildings were crumpled down. Then on August 9, 1945, 3 days after Hiroshima was bombed, Nagasaki was bombed as well. The bombing of both sites has led to the death estimation of about 215,000 people in total, 140,000 in Hiroshima and 75,000 in Nagasaki.
Once the bomb was dropped over Hiroshima, the blast wave shattered windows over long distances and over 2/3 of Hiroshima's buildings were demolished. The bomb also ignited hundreds of fire which would form together and produce a firestorm, adding more onto the chaos that was present. As for the resulting of the bombing in Nagasaki, it led the Japanese military to an unconditional surrender. As for the people who were affected by the bombs, many died instantly and some died from radiation exposure. There are also others who suffered from side effects and illnesses caused by the radiation exposure. For example, cancer, leukemia, bleeding, nausea, and many more.
Although the Germans were defeated, Japan's war in the Pacific was still ongoing. Harry S. Truman, the President of the United States, was advised that many Americans would die if they tried to invade Japan. Therefore, the Potsdam Conference held a meeting with the Big Three, which were the United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union. The government officials from the three parties discussed and negotiated the terms for the end of World War II. Since the Japanese military pursued to continue the war, President Harry Truman warned the Japanese military to surrender and declared an ultimatum stating that, and I quote, "We will not deviate from them. There are no alternatives."
The Potsdam Declaration was issued on July 26 of 1945. After receiving no reply from the Japanese military, President Harry Truman proceeded to execute his guarantee of the destruction in Japan. Enola Gay, also called the Super Fortress, was an aircraft that was used by the United States to deploy the bomb over Hiroshima. It was a 4-engine heavy bomber that was built by Boeing. The Enola Gay crew consisted of Staff Sergeant Karen, Sergeant Sterborick, Staff Sergeant Dusenbury, Sergeant Sherrard, Major Farabee, Major Kirk, Navigator to Betts, and Captain Robert A. Lewis. After the attack on Hiroshima, a group from the Japanese Supreme War Council suggested to follow the Potsdam Declaration. However, due to the majority of the Supreme War Council's denial, the country decided to ignore the declaration. After receiving another rebellious act from the Japanese military, the U.S. decided to deploy another bomb. 3 days later, the atomic bomb was dropped over Nagasaki of Japan.
Finally, after using the atomic bomb on Nagasaki, the Potsdam Declaration was accepted by the Japanese military. The Potsdam Conference was a gathering of government officials consisting of the United States President Harry S. Truman, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, the President of China Chiang Kai-shek, and the leaders of the Soviet Union. As for the art of atomic diplomacy, it refers to the threat of nuclear warfare in order to achieve diplomatic foreign policy goals. In 1942, President Franklin D. Roosevelt approved of the atomic bomb's development, but didn't inform the Soviet Union on the project. In April 1945, Roosevelt passed away and the new president, Harry Truman, was left with the decision whether or not the project will still be kept secret. July 1945, Truman met Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill to negotiate governmental control of Germany, and Truman mentioned the existence of a destructive bomb without giving out any specific details. While leaders in the United States used the atomic bomb to force Japan to surrender, they also contemplated how nuclear weapons' great destructive potential could be utilized to strengthen the country's advantage in post-war diplomatic relations with the Soviet Union. After the bombing had passed, all that was left was 2 destroyed cities and many lifeless bodies. To build back that was lost, people started by going around collecting any unburned materials that they could use and slowly began to rebuild their homes. Gradually, they were able to restore electricity, transportation, and other functions.
The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki caused the death and suffering of thousands in Japan. The citizens of Hiroshima and Nagasaki are not at fault for what the Japanese military refused to do for the Potsdam Declaration. The victims of the bombing had been killed, injured, and have lost the ones they loved dearly. This event traumatized the lives of countless people who were unable to mentally and physically cope with life. The survivors who are still alive today testify that they had been young children at the time the bombing had started, which had resulted into hearing loss and permanent illnesses. What made the bombings of both cities especially unjustifiable was the fact that they had sacrificed and tormented the lives of innocent humans in order to gain victory. The abuse of power had led to the killing of human lives, which are morally wrong to mess with. One of the victims have stated that, "All I want to do is forget, but the prominent keloid scar on my neck is a daily reminder of the atomic bomb. We cannot continue to sacrifice precious lives to warfare. All I can do is pray earnestly, relentlessly for world peace."
The refusal of the Japanese military consequently led to the Potsdam Conference, in which the Potsdam Declaration was announced to the Japanese military. After they had refused to follow the declaration, the government officials from the conference all agreed to the use of nuclear weapons. On August 6, 1945, the first atomic bomb was detonated on Hiroshima of Japan. However, this did not stop the Japanese military from ignoring the declaration. Therefore, on August 9, another bomb was dropped on the city of Nagasaki. After the sacrifice of over 215,000 innocent citizens, the Japanese military had finally surrendered. Due to the destructive issue the nuclear weapons had caused, the art of atomic diplomacy was announced. To conclude, the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki is not justifiable, as it led to an abundant amount of destruction to the cities and to the innocent citizens.